For those that have logged in, welcome to the Oregon Friendly Driver training. I'm gonna wait a few minutes to make sure everyone has a chance to hop on, so stay tuned. Welcome those that are logged on. Welcome to the Oregon Friendly Driver training. We are going to wait till about a minute or two after 3 o'clock before we start. Just wanted to make sure everyone has taken the pre-test before we get started. There's some details on that in the chat if you did not see the link for the pre-test. Welcome to the Oregon Friendly Driver training. I'm gonna wait about 2 more minutes to let anybody else that's working on logging in, give them some time to get on. Thank you to those who have taken the pre-test. So once again, welcome to everybody who has successfully logged on. Looks like we have about half of the group, so I'm gonna wait 1 more minute. For anybody who has not taken the pre-test, as I wait those 1 or 2 more minutes to get started, the link to the pre-test is in the chat, and we like to get that taken prior to completing this webinar. So you can kind of explore that. It takes probably about 3 minutes to get done. Like I said, I'm going to wait about 1 more minute and then we'll get started, or 2 more minutes. I'm going to start with some introductions just to kind of get a slow start, and just so while people make their way into the webinar, they can still kind of pick up into the training. So I am Whitney Bennett. I work for Commute Options, and welcome to the Oregon Friendly Driver Training. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I have with me on this call Kim Curley, who's our Community Engagement Coordinator. She is going to be assisting with kind of monitoring the questions that come in and hand raises, and she will reply to those that she's able to reply to. Any questions that we do not get to, we can address at the end. And I am actually going to stay on about a few minutes after the webinar. We're done at 4 o'clock, but if there's any open-ended questions, I'm going to stay on a bit longer to answer anything, and I can also reply to emails or by email if we don't resolve anything. So like I mentioned, housekeeping, you can see your control panel. There is a box for questions. If you input your questions in there as we're going through, we will either reply to you in that questions box or follow up at the end or via email. I am going to keep everybody on mute, and so that we can kind of minimize background noise. And it's 3:04, so we've got 19 people on already. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward with the webinar. So a little about the Oregon Friendly Driver Program. It is sponsored by the wonderful family at the Oregon Department of Transportation, and created in a partnership between Commute Options, Safe Lane Transportation Coalition, and the Street Trust. And it's really all about providing information to people that are driving so we can make the roads a lot more safer and overall friendly. My job at Commute Options is I run the Safe Routes to School program. So I run other programs that just help to make sure the roadways are safe for all users. So at Commute Options, there are several programs underneath the umbrella of Commute Options, and those include Get There, the Walking School Bus, and Safe Routes to School. More details can be seen on our website, and if there's any questions about that at the end, I'm happy to answer questions on what Commute Options offers. So this presentation, this material is all about driving with people walking and biking. So you're going to see a strong emphasis really on a lot of people that are biking, but also we'll talk about people walking, because it's really important as a person driving to understand what to expect from the other users. One thing that we will cover is we're going to go into why crashes happen. We'll talk about what is and is not friendly, and along with that, there's going to be some periodic polls that pop up. So I'm going to give everybody about 20 seconds for the sake of time to reply to those polls, and then I'll close those polls and we'll move on with the presentation. So that'll come up periodically. We will talk about infrastructure, and we'll talk about common crashes and how best to avoid them as people who are driving. We're going to talk about, like I mentioned, people walking, people biking, and people driving. Those of you that are on the other side of the screen are coming from a place of people driving. And that's not to say that you're also not a person that walks and a person that bikes, but for the sake of kind of looking at this through the lens of a person driving, it's good to take it in as from that perspective, to know how to react when you are behind the wheel, or know how to be prepared. And the main reason for looking at this slide too is just to emphasize that we are all people. So it's not just a car, it's not just a bike, it really is these human living beings, these mothers, these fathers, these sisters, these brothers that are using the street. And so when something happens that's bad, that's impacting a human being and a person. And so we really want to be conscious that we are all people sharing the roadway. And before I dive into this particular slide, we're going to talk about the word crash. So you'll hear that used throughout this presentation, because when we talk about incidents that happen on our roadways, we're really talking about a crash. We're not talking about an accident, because for the sake of just defining an accident is an unforeseeable and unplanned event, but as people driving, we do have to go through training in order to get our driver's license. And then in that training, we are told of what to do and what not to do, and then what happens to us if we do the what not to do's. And so therefore, since we know what the implications are of those, the breaking of the rules, then, or not being a friendly driver, then those are not accidents, they are crashes. So here, this slide right here is showing really crashes happen at the fault of the person driving as much as they happen at the fault of the person biking. So it's a 50-50 divide here, a split. But as a person driving, you are containerized in a large amount of metal, and so you tend to get less smushed than a person on a bike. So hence the Oregon Friendly Driver program, and you becoming an Oregon Friendly Driver, you have a lot more power to support safety on the roadways as a person that's driving as an Oregon Friendly Driver. So vulnerable users is what we'll speak about in terms of the other people and the other users of the road. And those are people walking or riding a horse or driving a tractor. And you can kind of visualize maybe other times you've seen vulnerable users, maybe some that aren't even listed here, but they could be people on different mobility devices. They can be people on roller skates or Heelys, utility workers, all kinds of vulnerable users out there. And there are laws in place in Oregon that protect vulnerable users that you as a person driving are responsible to follow in order to make the roads safer and reduce the amount of crashes and the amount of times that people get injured on the roadways. So we're going to dive into people biking, because this is, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of this discussion of people biking in this presentation because of the proximity of people biking to people driving. So when a person biking is in the roadway, they are treated as a person driving and are required to follow almost all of the same rules as a person that is driving. So it is really important that a person driving is aware of that. And as a friendly driver, you're gonna make sure that you respect people on bicycles just as if they're a person driving. So people ride bikes for all different reasons. Some of you may be people that do bike as well, and for the many reasons that we do go on the roadways, whether it's to get recreation or exercise or get to work or go to the store. There's lots of reasons that people would be on a bike on the road, and just like there's lots of reasons that people would be driving their cars on the road. And so they deserve to be treated as also fair users of the road. So here's our first poll. So I'll just give you a little insight of what we're looking at. So this is an intersection, and you can see there is a person driving the white car turning left. There's a person biking in the bike lane on the bottom here. And my question to you as this poll comes up, is the person driving acting as a friendly driver? So give me a second, and you're going to see a poll launch up on your screen. And this is your opportunity to quickly answer this poll. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds. Final answers in. Closing the poll. Excellent. Okay, so here we go, sharing the results. Not friendly got the extra vote there. So very good. So this is kind of, it's not a trick, it's just more to really think about that concept of what do we mean by friendly? So the person driving is not being a friendly driver. So those who answered no are correct. Yes, the person on the bicycle is breaking the rules by going the wrong direction in the bike lane, but the person driving if they were acting as a friendly driver, would wait and allow that person to cross the street. Because imagine how that person driving's day is going to change when he does impact and crash into the person on the bike. It's not going to be a good end of the day. So ideally, so everyone has a good day, the Oregon friendly driver would stop, allow for the person on the bike to pass through the intersection, and then continue on versus trying to teach the person on the bike a lesson. You don't want to see that. So good job on the polls. There'll be more of those to come. So as you can see, the person on the bike might get smushed right about there. All right, so just to know what you might be seeing on a person on a bike, it is a law for people on bikes to have lights on their bikes when the visibility is not good. All right, so that could mean prior to sunset. It could mean half an hour after prior to sunrise, and a half an hour after sunset. But it also could mean on rainy or really cloudy conditions. I know we're kind of spread out all over Oregon here on this webinar today, so we've got all kinds of conditions that could apply, even smoke. So not the best time to bike, but it does happen, right? So when a person is on a bike, they should have their lights so that it helps you as a person driving see them. It doesn't always happen. So I have been the person to forget my lights because I have a couple bikes, and sometimes I switch my lights around and then I end up on one bike that doesn't have a light. And my bad, but as a person driving where there's low visibility, you need to be prepared. And if the visibility is low, keep your eyes open for people, other users of the roadways that might have forgotten their lights at home. All right, so passing a person on a bike. So the rules on passing a person on the bike in Oregon, and also just to be a friendly driver, what you would follow is in roadways that the speed limit is 35 miles per hour or greater, you are required to provide what is called fall distance to a person on a bike. Fall distance is the amount of space that person would take up if they fell, right? So you got to kind of do some math and think about not only the height of the bike, but the height of the person, and have to give them that space. So what that, the other thing that is allowed, if you are going to pass that person on the bike, you may cross over to the opposite lane of traffic as long as it is clear for you to use that lane to pass the bike. If it is not clear, then you'll patiently wait until there's enough space that you can provide that fall distance. Note that when you are going in an area where the speed is less than 35 miles per hour, you are required to give them a minimum of 3 feet. But really, as an Oregon friendly driver, give them as much space as allowed that you can safely do. Another key part to this is if you are a driver that drives a really large vehicle, big truck or a van, taking into consideration something called wind blast. So when you are passing a person on a bike, that the wind will blast out from behind or behind the tires and can really shake up the person on the bike. So taking that in consideration into how much space you are giving that person on a bike when you do pass. We're going to go up for another poll here. So I want you to take a look at this picture and what you're looking at. We have a person on a bike, and we have a vehicle, a person driving, pulling a trailer. And my question to you is, the person that is passing, is the person driving being a friendly driver? I'm going to once again give you 20 seconds to check in on your friendly driver knowledge. All right, closing the poll. Amazing. So I'll share the results. 100%. Exactly. Let me close this out. Yes, the person driving is being a friendly driver. Ample space provided, and it's a big vehicle, so really providing a lot of space to, just in case there might be a bit of that wind blast. And the opposite lane of traffic is clear, so it's safe for the person driving to enter in. So check, very good. In Oregon, it is allowed for people on bikes to be on the sidewalk. They're required to go the speed of the pedestrians, which can be about 3 miles per hour. And as a person driving, it's really nice to know that this might exist, because what it does is it lets you know that when you're pulling out from your driveway, pulling into your driveway, or even at an intersection, it gives you the heads up to know what to look for in case there might be a person on a bike on the sidewalk. Quite often there's kiddos, one of those is mine, and they love to ride on the sidewalk. No matter how many times you teach them to use the roadway, they're still gonna kind of hug that. So it's good to have those eyes out for people on sidewalks, because they're a little bit less predictable. They can pop off the curb or be passing through the driveway. So as a friendly driver, you're always gonna be making sure you have an eye on those curbs for other vulnerable users. Okay. Recently in Oregon, there was a new stop as yield law passed earlier in this year. And something to know about this as a person driving is people that are on bicycles are allowed to come to a rolling stop at a stop sign and may continue through the intersection without coming to a complete stop, as long as there's no other vehicles that are stopped in the intersection. So as a person driving, if you see that happen, and it is actually allowed in the state of Oregon for the person on the bike to do that in a safe way, just to be prepared. And the other thing that this doesn't apply to is a stop light. A person on a bicycle is required to come to a complete stop at a solid red light. All right, so this is my favorite part. We've all been staring at the screen. I don't know how much you move when you're staring at a screen, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of stretch out and move, and just, even if you've done these hand signals a million times, you use them on your way to work today, I'm going to have you just kind of extend your arms out and go through them. I can't see that you're doing it, but I'm going to trust that you get a little stretch. So hand signals are something that people on bicycles use to communicate with people that are driving. And as a person driving, it's good to know that, to know what they're trying to communicate with you. So if you take your left hand and you bend the elbow, you've got the person on the bicycle is indicating they're taking a right hand turn. So sometimes they'll point. And then the other way is the right alternative, where they might extend their hand out to the right. Depends on where the cars are behind them. They might choose one or the other. It also might depend on what arm they feel safe to move from the handlebars. The left-hand turn is the arm extended and possibly pointing or just extending the arm. And then the stop is that left arm, elbow bent, hand down. So I hope that you got the opportunity to participate in practicing this hand signals, so that you can understand what your person on the bike is working to communicate. A little bit about hand signals. This is an ideal way for a person on a bike to communicate with you as a driver, and then you can respond as a friendly driver. But sometimes conditions don't allow for a person on a bike to use these hand signals. So if it's rainy or icy, or they're going up a hill or going down a hill, they may not feel comfortable pulling their hands off their handlebars. So you might want to queue up, or you might want to look for other ways that that person on the bike is looking to communicate. So sometimes they could turn their head, work for eye contact. Sometimes they'll use their voice. So there's lots of different ways they might be trying to signal. Of course, they might be trying to veer off into the lane, but lots of times you'll get like a bit of a shoulder check indication. So just to be aware as an Oregon friendly driver, just look for the ways that a person on a bike might be trying to communicate their next move. I'm going to backtrack and just add one more note to this. Often people do see the right and the left hand signals. Not as often do they see the stop signals. Ultimately, a person on a bike should be communicating as much as possible, but sometimes the stop signal isn't used as much. Although if you are a person that rides a bike, it's one to stick in your tool belt as a way to become a much safer user of the road. All right, So improper opening or leaving open of a vehicle door is against the law. And so this is where we're going to talk a little bit about a thing called being doored, a person on a bike's worst nightmare. This is going to give you another opportunity to move for a little bit, because I want to show you the ideal way to open your car door in order to prevent what you see happening here on this slide, right? So imagine that you are in your car and you are parked, and there is a bike lane. Sometimes there's bike lanes between a parking spot and a sidewalk, or even if you're parked on and there's a sidewalk adjacent to you, there could be vulnerable users using that sidewalk. And so when you open the door, you could take those users out if you're not paying attention. So if you're in the passenger seat of your car, driver's seat of your car, I want you to take your right hand and I want you to wiggle your fingers. So everyone can do this. Just move the fingers just in case they've just been sitting there, maybe on the keyboard for the first half of the day, get some movement. And then with that hand, you're actually going to reach, pretend you're opening up your car door, and notice how much you turn and how much more you can see behind you when you open, when you do that movement. So that increases your view shed, and you're way more likely to see a person on a bike than if you try to open it with the closest hand. That's called the Dutch reach. And it's an amazing way to prevent taking out anybody who might be rolling by really close to your car. So in this next section, we're going to talk about infrastructure. And infrastructure is really anything, it's our built environment, right? Big word for our built environment. A lot of you are very familiar with the different types of infrastructure. So we're going to start by diving into just a little history of traffic engineering really briefly. And what you see in this slide is, on the left-hand side, what we started with. Our transportation systems were designed around people walking and people on horses. And then go ahead and fast forward to 1950 to present, and our transportation systems are really, we took for a long time this strong emphasis on designing them around vehicles and people that are driving. So that meant that more of the vulnerable users had to navigate and kind of get their transportation got much more piecemeal and jeopardized by the kind of onslaught of auto-orientated type of layout. That said, there's a lot of these people on bicycles and people walking and having to kind of share the roads with people driving. So when, as a person driving, kind of need to take that into consideration, as these are valuable users of the road, and they deserve to be able to share the space as much as possible until we can kind of develop it in a way that everyone has equal access. So infrastructure can come in many ways. Generally speaking, like we can think about infrastructure when we talk about people biking and people walking as maybe really nice sidewalks, maybe pedestrian overpasses, even paint on the road. But we also want to highlight the places where there might be a lack of infrastructure and where it's a little bit harder for people to navigate where and decide their positioning in certain roadways and certain transportation areas. So for example, what we see in this big picture here is there's a really wide road and there's no sidewalks. We have people crossing here, but even as a person driving, it's a little bit vague as to where you need to position on the road as a person driving, and even more vague for the people walking and disconnected. So this is really common, and what's important is that as a friendly driver, you definitely take into consideration the vulnerable user and make sure that you are not smushing them or taking advantage of the roadways, because they need their access as well. And a couple of these other examples here on this slide, you can see the paint, which is some infrastructure. It draws out a crosswalk, but it goes to nowhere. Really, there's not a way to navigate through that. And so it's just disconnected. Often you'll see some old bike lane. So we have on the right-hand side just some paint that's faded, and there no longer is really clear messaging that that's a bike lane. So that's also sometimes difficult for the person that's driving to know, and also difficult for the person on the bike to know where they need to position themselves. So we have to just be aware that there's the other users that we have to give space to. So we'll go into infrastructure that exists for people walking, which are crosswalks. In Oregon, every corner is a crosswalk. And so we've got lots of different kinds of ways that is shown. In this example, we're looking at an unmarked area, unmarked crosswalks. So in the photo, you can see the unmarked crosswalks. And then on the graphic on the right-hand side, you can see the unmarked crosswalk. And what I want to highlight here is the person who is driving, the Oregon Friendly Driver, is going to stop for the person that is walking. So what the law says is that the person that's walking will indicate their intent to cross by putting a toe, it could be a cane, it could be a wheel, something into the intersection to indicate their intent to cross. As a friendly driver, it's good to be able to even make eye contact, even using verbal cues to communicate to the person walking to make sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to crossing the street. So as an Oregon Friendly Driver, in the graphic on the right, that person driving the truck would be stopping for the person walking, and also the person biking would be stopping for the person walking. The person walking would cross the road completely, hopefully give a wave and a smile, and then the person driving and the person biking may continue on their way once the person walking has made it all the way across. So this is an example of an unmarked crosswalk. This is reality a lot of the time. So it looks different in so many different areas across the state, but this is a very realistic place where people might need to cross. Because if that person is standing on the other side, they may take a long look down the road and see that there isn't a light, there isn't a crosswalk, and it has to happen here. They may have to run in to that Shell station and grab some Fritos, and it's got to happen at that intersection. So as an Oregon Friendly Driver, your responsibility is to be aware when there are people showing intent to cross, stopping completely and allowing for that person who's walking to cross all the way across the road before continuing on. And what we have here is marked crosswalks. Beautiful paint on the road, really clear indication with a bright yellow sign indicating a place where people walking would be crossing. And if you take a look at the graphic on the right-hand side, what you can see is the person driving the truck is stopped behind the crosswalk, and so is the person biking stopped behind the crosswalk to allow for the person walking to cross the road. Yeah, and that's actually happening on the other side of the road too. Good. So this is just showing all of those, and again, somewhat realistic, because you can get all the different types of crossings within one block. So you can see that example of the marked crosswalks, really nice paint on the road. You can see an example of what's called a mid-block crosswalk, and then on the right you can see an example of the unmarked crosswalk. All of these are places where people walking can cross the road, and as a friendly driver, it is your responsibility to keep your eyes peeled for vulnerable users that may be crossing the road. I'm going to highlight here as well, the people that are on bicycles may also be using the crosswalks if they're up on the sidewalk, and that, like I mentioned earlier on, that people can ride their bicycles on the sidewalk, but they have to behave as a person walking if they're doing that. So you might see a person walking and a person on a bike in any of these crosswalks. And we'll get more into some details of that with people on bikes later. This is an example of a really nifty piece of technology called the Rapid Flashing Beacon. And the way that these work is when the person walking approaches, they'll hit the button, and sometimes they're on timers, so they don't require you to hit the button. And then the lights will flash, and they can be seen a very long distance, and it's indicating that people's intent to cross. And as a Oregon-friendly driver, you will stop at the white line that is painted on the cement or prior to the crosswalk, and allow for those people to cross. So in the graphic and in both of the photos as well, you can see there's an island. So the law says once the person walking makes it to the island, you may slowly proceed through that intersection as a person driving. The thing here, as an Oregon-friendly driver, give that person that's walking as much time as they need to get even all the way to the other side. It's still, you know, in order to not apply too much pressure to that vulnerable user, and especially to children. The other thing that I wanted to note here is that these types of this type of infrastructure, sometimes people that are walking don't know they need to push the button, and they may enter into the crosswalk without waiting for the light to start flashing. So as a friendly driver, it's good to just be aware that this may happen at one of these types of infrastructures, and to plan and be prepared for how that person that is walking may be entering into the crosswalk. This is a very important one as well. A friendly driver does not pass a stopped vehicle at a crosswalk. So this is an example of what you're looking at in the graphic. Is the person driving in the white car has stopped in front of the crosswalk, and the person walking is crossing. So let's pretend that it's crossing, it's a student crossing, and there's a school. And so that white car stopped to allow for that person driving. The person driving the truck in the back is a little bit late for work and decides they don't want to stop, and so they kind of go over to the other lane to pass the stopped car and are unable to see the person crossing the walk, and smush, take out that person crossing, that student crossing. Terrible. We don't want that to happen. So as an Oregon-friendly driver, you always stop if there is another vehicle stopped in front of you at the crosswalk, because you cannot see if there is a person crossing right in front of that car. And this is obviously the case as well if there is a bus, whether it's any kind of transit that's stopped, because your visibility is so low when you're coming up behind a bus. And so you always want to stop and wait for the vehicle in front of you to continue, the person driving to continue through the crosswalk. Okay, moving on. Another poll. So what you're looking at is an intersection, and there is a person on a bike stopped here. There's a person driving a truck stopped here, and there is a person walking across the intersection at the bottom. So my question to you is, the person driving the truck being a friendly driver? Give me, there we go. Launching the poll. You have 20 seconds. About 3 seconds left. Last vote's going in, and I'm going to close it. Oh, amazing. Good job. 100% yes, correct. It's not friendly. The person driving the truck is in the crosswalk, and so now we can just, sometimes we can see what's going to happen. This person that's walking is going to really have to kind of enter into the intersection, and then that puts that person walking, who's already a vulnerable user, in a more vulnerable position when entering and making their way through an intersection. So to be a friendly driver, we would stop before the crosswalk. So plan ahead as you're approaching an intersection, so hitting those brakes a little sooner. The person on the bike is being friendly because they've stopped before. We're going to dive into infrastructure for people biking right now. So common infrastructure for people biking is the bike lane. And as I pointed out earlier, they look different in different areas. Here's a really pretty one, downtown Bend, nicely painted. And then on the right-hand side, this is a reality that they don't always look as good. They are still the place where that person on a bike is going to be using the road, and as a friendly driver, you want to be aware of these different types of infrastructure. One thing that's important to be aware of, as you can see in the graphic on the right-hand side. So what you're looking at is a person driving a truck. This one right here is backing out of a driveway, and there's a person on a bicycle in the bike lane. So the danger that exists in a situation like this is the person that's driving the truck needs to make sure they look at the bike lane before pulling out of that driveway to make sure there's no users in the bike lane. In this instance, the person in the truck did not, and there's a really good chance that that bike is going to smash into the back of that truck. Similarly, this white truck, this person driving this white car is taking a left-hand turn into a driveway. Also, as a friendly driver, what you would do is you would want to make sure you wait until the bike lane is clear before taking that left-hand turn. In this example, that person driving the white car is very likely going to smush the person on the bike coming from the north. So important to check driveways before crossing over bike lanes. So as a person driving, you may cross a bike lane. As these two examples show, you may cross a bike lane, but as a person driving, it's not only it's the legal thing to do and the friendly thing to do is make sure that bike lane is completely clear before you do cross it. So bike lanes, here's an example of a bike lane, and it's got green paint in it, and that's just a way that you can notice, even if you close your eyes and then open your eyes and look at the picture. I don't know about you, my eyes like really catch that green paint first, and so the intent of the green paint is just that, just to indicate, hey, there's other users here. This is a bike lane. You might see a bike here, and so it will help to let that person driving the truck know that they don't want to take a quick right-hand turn because there's going to be somebody else that is more vulnerable than them in that lane, or yes, that they'll need to wait for. Okay, we've got another example of a bike lane, and this is an instance where you can see that the people driving have to cross over the bike lane in order to take a right-hand turn. They're not using the bike lane as a lane of traffic, but they do have to cross over it. So in order to be a friendly driver, what you want to make sure you do is make sure there's no people on bicycles in that bike lane when you do cross over it. In the graphic on the right-hand side, you're looking at a person driving a truck taking a right-hand turn, and there's multiple places where there can be impact and a crash if the person driving does not take a full survey of the vulnerable users that there would be. You can see crossing over that bike lane, turning right, and there's people on bicycles in both directions that that person driving needs to make sure that they wait for before they take that right-hand turn. So as an Oregon-friendly driver, you would just have your eyes peeled for people using the bike lanes. This is an example of a buffered bike lane. The intent with this slide is just to show that, again, as a person driving, there's going to be times when you do cross over a bike lane, and as a friendly driver, you are responsible for making sure it's clear. And the intent of a buffered bike lane gives the person on a bike a little bit more comfort. There's a little bit more space between the person on the bike and the people driving. In this example that we're looking at in the photo, that is a parking area, and the person driving had to cross over the buffered bike lane when they left their parking spot and entered into the main roadway. And you can see bike lane is clear, so the person driving was being a friendly driver. Another example is shown on the graphic on the right-hand side. This is once again that pulling out of a driveway, and there's a person on a bike in the buffered bike lane. There's a person driving a truck backing out of the driveway, not being a friendly driver, probably going to smash this person on the bike. That's not going to be good. It's going to ruin the person on the bike's day. It's going to ruin the person driving's day. So in order to be an Oregon-friendly driver, the person in the truck should have made sure the bike lane was clear before they backed out of the driveway. This is another example of the use of green paint. So this is a protected bike lane. It's very bright and says, hey, there's other users here, there's people biking here. And in this example, you can actually see how the bike lane is buffered there, and there's parking to the left. So here, if you were sitting in that parked car with the rack on the top, the one in front, and you were a passenger, if you want to move here with me again, I want you to take your left hand and you're going to wiggle your fingers, and you want to leave, you want to get out. So you're going to take that left hand, you're going to reach for the passenger door, and notice how your body turns, and you're more likely to see more. And that's doing the Dutch reach from the passenger side, so that you don't door a vulnerable user that would be within that bike lane there. It's a very handy tool to use to make sure that you're not taking out people on bicycles when you're exiting your car. On the right-hand side is exactly that same example, where we have people driving parked, and we have a bike lane here that's buffered, and this would be the point of impact here. There could be someone doored if the person leaving the passenger side doesn't use the Dutch reach. Here is another poll for us. What you're looking at here is the person driving a personal vehicle. This is a truck, and they are parked here, and there is a person on a bike. So in the bike lane coming along. Can you tell me if this is friendly or not, the person driving? There's our poll has been launched. You have 20 seconds to reply to whether or not the person parked their personal vehicle is friendly or not. Amazing. I'm going to close the poll. What amazing students everyone is. Good job. Exactly. So they parked a personal vehicle and in the bike lane. You can't do that. But there is a exception to this, trying to emphasize that it is a personal vehicle, right? If it is a commercial, and that is it's a call by, it's your job to be parked in a certain place, say you're a utility worker or delivery truck, there is an exception there. But if it's a personal vehicle, you're running in to grab a latte really quick and then running out, that is not being a friendly driver, and that is against the law. Sheros. These are really amazing, and so few people really know how they function. And as a person on a bike, I'm aware of that, because when I'm in this position, as you see in the photo on the left, quite often I get reminded that a lot of people are not really super happy or aware that that's actually the place to be. So a shero is a narrow shared lane, and it's often in areas where speeds are very slow. And you can see it's a place where a person that is driving would share the lane with the person that is biking, because there's not enough room for a bike lane. Possible crashes that exist here is when that shero starts as a person that is biking comes into the lane. If a person that's driving doesn't know that that's going to happen and doesn't know what that painting on the road means, there can be a crash there. So as a friendly driver, when you see that painting on the road, anticipate, if there are people biking around, that there's going to be some sharing going along in that area. So these are really great ways to help with navigating through some slow areas or directional assistance. They are effective way of moving bikes and people driving through without causing too much implications, as long as everyone knows what a shero is. We have another poll coming up, and I want you to take a look at this picture. And we have people driving in the shero. We also have 2 people biking. My question to you is, are the people biking being friendly bikers? Are they doing the right thing as they use this shero? Let me launch this poll here. "20 seconds, now about 15 seconds to think about it. And tell me what you think about the people that are biking. Good job. All right, so yes, it is friendly, It's kind of one of those things too with this infrastructure that is we all can learn a lot about still. So this is allowed. 2 people on bicycles can be sharing the lane like that, as long as they're not slowing traffic down and they're going with the flow of traffic. Everyone is going to be in a happy place sharing the lanes in this kind of scenario. So it's good to be patient and let everyone move on through. Roundabouts. So little bit on roundabouts. You may live in a place where there are roundabouts. You may live in a place where there are 0 roundabouts. What's important is that they do exist, and that if you do end up traveling outside of your place that doesn't have roundabouts, you may come across one of these, and it's really nice to know how to navigate them. What you're looking at well, for people that are on bikes, they can use a roundabout in 2 ways. And as a friendly driver, it's really great to be aware of what those ways are so that you don't end up pushing them out of the roundabout. So in the first one, if you take a look at the graphic on the right-hand side, the person on the bike is in the roundabout. So a person on a bike can use a roundabout just like a car can. They use the lane and they enter into the roundabout. And when they're ready to leave, they will signal and then will exit the roundabout. And you as a person driving would be behind them. And also when you're ready to leave the roundabout, you too would signal and leave the roundabout. You do not pass a person on a bike. You don't pass a car in a roundabout, so you wouldn't be passing a bike on a roundabout. Even if they were hugging the right, sometimes people on bikes, because they're not required to get bike license, aren't as familiar with how they are required to navigate in a roundabout or other types of infrastructure, but you still know that the safest thing to do, the friendliest thing to do, the legal thing to do is to treat that person on the bike as a car, and you would let it make its way around the roundabout in that way without passing them. The second way you can see how someone can use, a person on a bike can use a roundabout, they may use the sidewalk as a person walking would. When they use the sidewalk, they're required to go the speed of a pedestrian. They can walk, they can ride their bike as this person on the bike with his child is doing, or they can walk their bike, whatever they feel is the safest way to get across. As a friendly driver, your job is to be aware of any vulnerable users that might be in the crosswalk, that might be on the entering the crosswalks, and any people on bikes that might be within the roundabout. This is called a bike box. Again, a piece of bike infrastructure that not everybody has, but you may enter a town that has it, and it's good to know how to use it. What you're looking at is, again, the green paint. It's going, hey, there's other users here. There's bikes that are going to be present. As a friendly driver, you're required to wait there, as it says, behind the white line. You cannot turn right on a red light when there's a bike box. You need to wait until the light turns green. You wouldn't pass people on bikes. So the graphic on the right-hand side shows the friendly driver patiently waiting in the truck and 2 people on bicycles stopped in the bike box. Another type of bike infrastructure, also not everywhere, but in case you have it where you live or travel and see it, it's good to be aware. So these are called cross bikes. Again, the green paint calls out there's other users here, there's going to be some bikes maybe, so be aware. As an Oregon friendly driver, you just want to make sure that you're aware that there might be people on bicycles present. Note here too that while that person on the bike is on the cross bike, they are to be treated like a vehicle, just like you would as if they were sharing the road with you. As soon as that person on the bike enters a crosswalk, so if this person on a bike in the photograph was to veer into the crosswalk, they are then considered people walking, and they are to be treated like people walking. And so as a friendly driver, you would stop and allow for that person on the bike to move through the crosswalk. We're going to run through some scenarios, and I'm going to talk about best ways to be a friendly driver in these scenarios. So this is called a squeeze by, and it's not something, it's not something you want to do. As a friendly driver, you would make sure you would give plenty of space to pass the bike, because a squeeze by doesn't give enough space, and if you're definitely not giving fall space. So an easy place for the person driving to squish the person on the bike. You want to wait until there's enough space for you to enter into the opposite lane of traffic. And if it's 35 miles per hour or more, you're going to give them that fall distance, so the amount of space that they would need for their full height if they were to fall over. This is called right hook. So the person on the bicycle is in the bike lane going straight. The person driving is taking a right-hand turn. And where we're going to get a smush here is right there on that right-hand turn. As a friendly driver, you are going to wait for the person on the bike to cross the intersection and then take a right-hand turn. Similarly, this is called a left cross. So the person turning in the truck, the person driving the truck, taking a left-hand turn, and where we're going to see a smush is right there, as he or she does not wait for the person on the bike to cross. As a friendly driver, you would pause and wait until the intersection is clear and there is no people biking or driving before you took that left-hand turn. Here's a wrong way left cross. So remember that pole early on in where we had the person biking, going the wrong way. So yes, they're going the wrong way. And then in this instance, the person driving the white car is taking a left-hand turn. We're likely going to see some smushing going on right about there. Ultimately, this impact is going to change this person driving and this person walking, and it's going to change the way they live their life. So it would be better off if that person driving waited for the person biking, even though they're in the wrong. That person on the bike is much more vulnerable and is much more likely to die if they get hit by a car, by a person driving. So be patient, be a friendly driver, and allow the person to bike that's biking to cross. Leaving the bike lane, you might see this, a person biking may be leaving the bike lane, and for where there might be a trash can or something in the road, you need to be a friendly driver and anticipate that this could be happening. So look ahead, see if there's something that is blocking the bike lane and that might be happening, and think ahead and plan ahead and slow down and allow for that person biking to enter the bike lane. Impaired driving, just never do it. Very against the law, and it's very dangerous to all users. Same thing with distracted driving. It's against the law to text while driving. And then we get to kind of our main point. Ultimately, speeding shrinks the reaction time down and doesn't give you enough time to respond if someone on a bike is about to take the lane. So just briefly here, talking about death due to speed. As you incrementally increase your speed, you increase the number of people, the likelihood of you killing somebody. So if you go a little slower, give a little bit more time, people are more likely to live from an impact. Just main point for this slide is that a crash results in the people involved in it, they don't get to live their life the way that they lived before that crash. You change their life forever. It's the brothers, sisters, mothers. These are all really people that have the chance that you could be impacting. So ultimately, if you take anything from this presentation, it's just to slow down and wait that extra minute, let that person cross the street, let that person leave the bike lane, and we'll all feel a lot more safe on the roadways. So the next steps, I'm going to stay on after 3 o'clock or after 4 o'clock. If there's questions that have not been resolved, I'll follow up with anybody. If we don't get to anything, feel free to also email me. I'm just going to add, this is the final exam. So that link is available to you here. It is also gonna pop into the chat or the questions box for you to copy. It will also be emailed to you so that you can select that link. Please go to that final exam. This is how we make this program exist, by getting that information from you if you take that final exam. And then lastly, I wanted to say, we can go to the next one. We now have our course online and on demand. So this same content, this material is accessible from our website. You can see the URL on the bottom. So share this with anybody else that you think could benefit from learning a little bit about the rules of the road and benefit from being maybe a qualified Oregon-friendly driver. And the next thing I want to say as we come down to 4 o'clock is thank you a million times over for your participation. Everybody out there in Oregon benefits from you all taking this course and sharing this course. So, so I really appreciate the time that you have taken, and I encourage you to send me any additional questions or comments. My email is right there on this slide. And I have about 2 minutes. So yeah, if there's any questions.
Hey, Whitney.
Yes.
This is Kim. Kendra does have a question. She's wondering if this training is available to share with their drivers.
Yes, really, really good question, Kendra. This training is available. So this webinar specifically is being recorded, and this can be shared. That link to the online course can be also shared, and anybody can take that. It's free. They can take it whenever they like, going onto the website, enrolling, and taking the course. But if you would like this webinar to be done as this training, just send us an email and we can do another training for you for your drivers. So once again, just to encourage people to take that final exam, it takes about 5 minutes, and that will help us improve everything that we have to offer. So those of you who do need to log off, again, thank you so much. I look forward to sharing the road with you in a friendly way in the future, and I wish you a very lovely rest of your day. Like I said, I'm just going to hang out here. Just if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to ask them. I'll wait about 5 minutes or more if there's questions. I do see a question there. Can the friendly driver test be shared to the public or just internally? That's a good question, Kathy. I would encourage sharing the online course to the public, and then they can actually watch the webinar and take the test.
And I think the question is test, and who should take the test is whoever takes the class. So the pre-test and the post-test are basically to evaluate the effectiveness of this material in the participants learning the information. Definitely share this with everybody you know, especially if the driver.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Kim. Absolutely. Share this with everyone you know, and that test is in order for us to see if what we're offering allows you to become is effective in becoming more conscious of how to be a friendly driver. The link the question says the link for the course has the test attached.
the link for the online course into the questions box. So if you click that, you'll see the whole enrollment process, exactly how it works, the steps you need to take to create your little account and access all the pieces of the class. And great, because it's at your own leisure. Like if you are an insomniac like some of us, and you're 3 o'clock in the morning, want to learn something, super helpful.
Right, yeah. So again, any feedback anybody has, and if you do share that online course, and we'd like to get feedback on that too. We just launched that this month, so it's going to be a great tool. Oh, great, to the Facebook page. Thank you. I'm going to advance this once again so everyone can see my email.
I mean, this is like being a talk show host on the radio and waiting for the phone to ring.
Right. What we'll do is this again, this is my email. If there's any further questions, whether it's about sharing the course, the online course that's on demand, or the material we covered today, please feel free to reach out. This is really important material, and we want to make sure that it's available to anybody who's willing to take it. I'll wait like 1 more minute, and then we'll go ahead and close the webinar. All right, everyone have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your webinars that you do in this conference. And yes, thank you very much. All right, bye.